Premium Resources is a mineral exploration and development company that is focused on redeveloping the past-producing nickel, cobalt, and copper Celibbe and Selkerk mines in Botswana, one of the safest and most mining-friendly countries in Africa. We've got CEO Morgan Lekstrom here to review the company and the projects and to provide an outlook and expected goals and milestones for the coming year. It's Monday, May the 12th. I'm Martin Gago with Market Radius Research. Please remember this is neither recommendation nor investment advice. We're here to learn about the company. Morgan, thank you very much. Greatly appreciate you joining us today and giving us a review and an oversight on Premium Resources. How is it going?
It's great. It's great. I was saying earlier, it's warm in my office, but looks kind of warm outside too. So hopefully get some sunshine later.
All right, it's a lovely day. Why don't you take us through your presentation deck here, and then we'll follow up with some conversation and questions from myself and the audience.
Absolutely. Well, for everyone that is unfamiliar with Premium Resources, hopefully this will be an enlightening session. And for people that I see in the attendee list that are familiar with this, hopefully it will also be an enlightening session for you. So, but I'll start with a bit on kind of the macro backdrop of why I think Premium Resources and why I think our investors that put a lot of money into this last round think that this could be a big part of the supply chain. Given the macro sense on copper, obviously we all listen to Friedland talk and other people talk about how copper is going to hit this kind of cliff in the near future. My view on it is a little different. I think it's going to hit a cliff not just because of electrification, but because of what happened with electrification in the past. And so we look at the supply of copper, and what I mean by that is supply for what's needed to expand our current power grid, to actually rebuild the current power grid, to expand homes and all that stuff. This made me really think about, where are we going to get this from? Where is this coming from? Is it coming from DRC? Is it coming from Zambia? Is it coming from China? It's kind of probably all as an answer. And when we started looking at projects around the world, this one stood out, and it stood out for many reasons. Not only the copper side of it, but the nickel, the cobalt, the palladium, the platinum, the amount of material that is in the ground and already known and already there from past production really led us to believe that this is not only going to grow, but it's going to grow insurmountably. So I'm going to walk you through a presentation here. I might skip a few slides just because I don't want to ramble through the precursor or the forward-looking statement, but there is a forward-looking statement. Please take a look at it if you're interested with some scientific information. When we talk about the supply chain gap, again, I always like to say Robert Friedland explains this way better than anyone I know, but this is actually a very big concern for us as a society. I find that as a mining space and as a mining community, we often misunderstand that we need to prep to get there for when it's needed. I know Jim Bob Moffat used to say from Freeport, we build when they're down so we're ready for when they're up. But I feel like given the current economic cycle and the current pace of innovation, I don't think we're going to get that down to be ready for when we're up. So we're going to need to run fast and show how big and the scale that this can get. And I'll explain how that's going to happen during this presentation. But I'll start with the basics. What are we? Well, we are a copper, nickel, cobalt, palladium, platinum company with 2 past producing assets in Botswana. And let me talk about Botswana because it is such an interesting country to work in. You have the safest country in all of Africa. And when I say that, between Namibia and Botswana, they are the 2 safest countries in all of Africa. It has a 58-year standing democracy. It's the longest standing democracy in Africa. That in itself is very interesting because there's a lot of rotation of governments and stuff like that in Africa. It is the premier district for putting diamonds to the market. Look, Botswana has had such a very long, stable growth of its GDP through the diamond space and through the copper and nickel space that you're actually seeing it transition into this middle-class country that is hyper-focused on mineral exploration, mineral development, and mineral production. And that's what we have here. We have an underground resource that has 30 million tons, roughly, of 3.35% copper equivalent, which is very high grade. That's in the past producing Celibbe mine. So that's infrastructure in place, mine shafts in place, underground crushers in place. We're starting at a point that is where a developer would start, but with a resource that can expand at Celibbe alone. Then we get into our Selkirk resource, which is about 100 kilometers as a crow flies from us. That resource historically was 138 million tons of M&I. We have it at 44 million tons at 0.81% copper equivalent in an open pit shell. We're looking to rapidly expand that and change the grade on that. So I'll explain how we're going to do that shortly. People are always like, well, hold on, how do you rapidly expand something? Well, we're in a very unique position because both of these were past producing. There's a lot of work that has been done that we're recapturing into this company. And you can imagine that when you get that work and exploit it, you can see how quick these resources grow. So not only are we sitting on past producers, we're fully permitted mines. So when you look at the Lassonde curve, you know, you get into the exploration and then you go into the permitting, then you get into the development. We missed that whole permitting phase, which is quite exciting, especially in Botswana, where permitting is relatively quick. But even then, we are in economic zones, special economic zones, we're permitted, we have the resources, and we're rapidly expanding them. And I'm going to walk you through that right now. These assets, especially Celibbe, they were a part of something called BCL. They produced for 36 years. I love the adage that people use of the best place to find a new mine is in the shadow of a head frame, the shadow of an old mine. I like to say the best place to find a new mine is within a mine. And that's what we found here. So we've got a mine within a mine. The company only ever kept up 6 months ahead of schedule. So there was no real development that happened to show the scale of this. So when Premium got this asset, it had unknown scale to it. And we've proven that over and over and over, we can grow this. Our most recent press release was 183 meter step out. Again, more proof that it works. It happened again. So we're continually expanding these resources. Then we brought in Selkirk. That was a part of a company that was originally Lion Ore that got bought out by Norilsk for 4.7 billion US. That was going to be the secondary feed to the Phoenix mill that's 14 kilometers away from us. I'll explain that all in a minute. But from a historical standpoint, Botswana has been a stable place to explore and to develop, but also to produce. So that gives you a bit of a timeline and also what kind of infrastructure is in place there. I won't rattle through our comp chart, but when you put Premium up to the competitors in the industry and to our peers, it stands out. It stands out significantly because most of the competitors that we would have are owned by major mining companies. So this is something that as we go through the presentation, keep in mind of, you know, what these companies got bought out for, what they have and don't have in place. We have permits, we have infrastructure, and we have a very high growth phase that we're going to come through, and you're going to understand here in about 2 seconds. That is an underground mine. That is our underground. If you notice things about it, it is dry. We do not have a large inflow of water. The ground conditions are great. So again, things that when you're developing a mine that hasn't been developed before, these are all things you're learning as you go. We have 36 years of past learning to know how to mine this, 36 years of past learning how to know how to control the water in it. So again, all the little de-risking elements that happen, but we have expansion potential. This looks like a lot of, I keep looking at the side because my other screen's over here, but this has a lot of these yellow squares, and people go, well, hold on, those aren't resource blocks. This is the Celibbe mine complex. So we have Celibbe North and Celibbe Main. This is where our 30 million tons lives within. These are both past producing mines. Those gray shadows are areas of production. Excuse me. The red is where our current resources live. But if you notice in these yellow squares, they're called borehole EM plates. And one of our very talented VP of exploration, Sharon Taylor, is one of the foremost experts in downhole or borehole EM in the world. We have directly associated our massive sulfide mineralization with these borehole EM plates to the point that we have a 99% hit rate of borehole EM plate to massive sulfide. And for the non-geologists on the call, which I'm not, massive sulfides are what hosts our mineralization, our copper, our nickel, our cobalt. That's the host for this. So as you can tell, there's a very strong potential that both of these keep going while we continually to hit to show that. This is an 8+ kilometer trend. There is another option called Pickway Extension. We have the option to purchase that for $1 million US. It has a Samrak, which is a South African resource on it for 30 million tons in the 1.5% to 2% copper equivalent range. So again, another example that the mineralization just isn't secluded and put into our mine. It's a long trend, and we're able to go out and consolidate these large resources into one. So what I want to keep in mind here for the people on the call is you see all these borehole EM plates over here, and you go, okay, this has to look like, it looks like it connects. Well, how do we prove that this year? We're going to prove that, and we're going to prove that in a very, very quick manner here. So we, as a company, own our own drills. So when you think about, mobilization, a drill contract, or the cost of doing it, we have been drilling these rocks for years. We are very competent at drilling this. We have a very strong team on the ground. We are converting our underground drills to surface drills, and we've ordered a new one. We on our budget will save about 50% on our drilling. We are going to drill these from surface, and we are going to start drilling these borehole EM plates to show the scale of this Celibbe deposit. We want to show that it continues going. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I just don't see a scale in there. Roughly how deep are those holes you have mapped out there?
They'll go down about 2 kilometers vertical.
Oh, wow. Okay,
so up
pretty
to
deep.
2 kilometers. So they'll be 1.6 to 1.8 kilometers where we'll intercept, but at the angle, we have to go at a different angle to hit it at the right angle. It's a lot of angles. And so, yeah, I can easily highlight the scale in the future, but what I want to highlight is in here, we've hit widths of 100 meters of 4+% copper equivalent. We've hit recently in our infill drilling 27 meters of over 5% copper equivalent in a resource that has an average grade of 3%. So it shows you that as we're drilling, we're finding higher grade. These are very high grade in the world. Like, this is a very, very high grade deposit. You don't often see these massive sulfide deposits around that have this balance of copper, nickel, and cobalt. So not only are we expanding, and we're going to show this hinge drilling, we're expanding Celibbe North. By expanding down, we're showing that it continually shows it's open at depth. Both limbs in Celibbe North are open at depth. Celibbe Main is open at depth and along strike. So it's just a matter of drilling it. It's a matter of drilling it and continuing to show that. And I'll explain how we're going to drill that and the funding we have secured to do that in the next little bit here. But keep in mind, as this grows, this whole resource grows. They had never drilled enough to show this before. So it was one of those hidden gems that, or in Botswana, we like to say a diamond in the rough because it's diamond country. But for us, having people like Sharon and Sean, who's our president, who have deep understanding of these systems, those are people that can extract value really quick out of this. I'll come back to our catalyst, but what I want to touch on is Selkirk. It's kind of the unsung hero of premium resources. We really focused on Celibbe for the longest time, but when you look at Selkirk as an open pit, a historic resource of over 130 million tons, they never assayed for palladium and platinum. We've undertaken a reassay campaign, excuse me, and we've only reassayed a small amount of that, and that brought us to the 44 million tons, but included the PGEs. So it's a third copper, a third nickel, and a third PGEs, palladium and platinum, with a little bit of gold. And what's important about this is we have a low-cost, high-impact way to expand this resource through a reassay program. This was drilled to an M&I state. That is good enough for a feasibility study and go into production. We are doing a reassay program right now, and we're doing a metallurgical drilling program to not only expand this resource back to what it was before under 43-101, but we want to show that it includes all the palladium and platinum and that it's scalable. I expect this resource to grow significantly in the next 6 months, just like both of our resources. But when you can imagine having a pit at over 0.81% copper equivalent, it gets exciting because that in itself could be a world-class item on its own. So I always like to say it's the unsung hero. It was supposed to feed the Phoenix plant in the future. This is 14 kilometers apart. Phoenix was an operating mine. It was called the Tati mine. It was operating for a number of years. It's got 2 5 million ton per annum lines in it, right through crushing into flotation and the rest. We're 14 kilometers apart. We don't own it. It's owned by a private equity group, but it shows you that not only can we produce out of these mines, we can do it efficiently, and it's been done in country many times. So a lot of the de-risking and guessing work that happens in mining has been taken away already by the group, by us, and by the groups that have worked on this before while they're in production. A little bit on the Selkirk resource, and not to bore everybody to death with this, but again, wide open at depth, continues along. This pit is going to grow. We know we're going to grow this resource over time and over the next little bit here. But again, we're using modern technology to do this. We are using XRT, which is ore sorting, because the last time this was mined, dense media separation, DMS, worked very well. XRT only amplifies that. We're doing that work right now. So from a news flow standpoint, out of both, you're going to get a lot of metallurgical work. You're going to get a lot of drilling. You're going to get a lot of the XRT work that's required to show that these are low cost, high impact mines, and will be a big part of the critical metal supply chain. So a big part of the Selkirk land package that we got when we purchased this was the ability to explore around it. There's a number of showings that I'm sure my geologists would love to just go stick a drill on, and they will in the future. But there's many showings outside of this. The Phoenix mine was only 14 kilometers from us. Again, exhibited similar mineralization. So there's definitely a trend here. But most of the time, these operations were just solely focused on their operation, and they didn't consolidate the land package like what we have. So again, you're consolidating multiple different companies of land package and resources into one company, which is Premium Resources. And that was exciting for us when we got involved here. I want to touch on, yes, sir.
Sorry, just going back to the Selkirk there, those other exploration areas, do you have those optioned, or have you staked them, or are you sure
they're licensed to us?
Okay.
Yep. So we have a large land package that we can go and explore around.
So all the yellow areas there is your land?
Yeah, prospecting licenses. Yep. We have the ability to prospect them and drill them. So I want to kind of go through the model a little bit here. I'm sure there'll be questions from it. But the idea of like, how do you put this all together? What does this equal, right? You know, you got this underground mine in Selebi that's high grade. You've got this open pit that's wildly expanding as well. What does that do? How does that become a part of the critical metal supply chain quick? So when you have permitted mines like we do, we know that the metallurgy works. We're actually doing the work to optimize it with modern technology now. We brought in a number of very skilled, talented metallurgists that have the ability of what we call cracking the code. You know, they do it one way, but there might be a better way to do it. We are looking at a larger structure where we feed both mines into one mill, whether it's 2 lines in one mill or blended. We're doing that work right now. But that will save on the operating costs significantly, mainly because you're combining, you got the same trades, but there's a high skill set in Botswana. They've been operating copper mines, diamond mines all over the country for a very long time. We know there's competent trades. We know there's very competent engineers. A lot of the engineers that are in Botswana are trained in Canada. So you have a staff of people and an ability to pull on a group of people that are exceptionally talented. It's something that I'm very proud of. 99% of our workforce is Botswanan. And we're very successful at managing and working in that environment. So very talented team behind that. But our idea here is to get these mines not only expanded, but up and running, showing their economic viability by the end of this year and early Q1. So I'm not saying to go into production by then. I'm showing large scale economics of these mines by then. That's in a form of a PEA or more. But for us, it really is about showing that expansion potential and showing how we're going to benefit Botswana and benefit our investors by doing that in a very quick manner. I think it's a speed to market thing. And this is something I want to talk about on our cap structure. So people go, well, that's going to cost a lot of money, right? That's the main question. How are you going to do that? It's going to cost a lot of money. So when we, and I keep saying when we, Fiore Group, Frank Juster, myself, and our team came in to the company, the first thing we realized was they were really onto something. They were kicking butt. It was like high grade, continued drilling, but it was super undercapitalized. It needed capital, and it needed capital quick, but it also had a lot of debt. So we converted out $21 million of debt, not by paying it, but we converted into shares with our largest shareholder, which is EdgePoint. EdgePoint is a group out of Toronto. It's a $40 billion fund. They are very, very supportive behind this company. They're a 22.5% shareholder. And that's through converting all their debt, taking equity, and doing a number of other things. You have a huge balance there that just sits on their book. We raised $46 million non-brokered. And to put that in quantum, to raise $46 million non-brokered is no small feat. We did that because the investor group that came in with us, with Frank and myself and the rest of us, firmly believe that this mine is not only expandable, as I keep saying, but it will become a part of the supply chain in the very near future. And that is something that is rare and very hard to find nowadays. When you go through exploration into development, then into construction, you're talking 15 to 20-year mine life cycle. Through having past producing and permits, we can significantly compress all of that into a very short period of time in the mining industry. We're not biotech. We can't do it in 2 minutes. It takes time. But when you look at our current cap structure, we have 428 million shares. That sounds like a lot. But when you look at the distribution of those shares, there's only about 20% in the float. So management, directors, select shareholders, Frank and our Fiore group and our investors that came in, as well as EdgePoint control and own a lot of this stock. So we just announced recently that we'll be uplisting to the NASDAQ. That's a full uplist. That's not a half uplist. That is a full primary issuance NASDAQ. So we'll be there after our shareholder vote. We'll be looking at doing a select consolidation, a minimum required consolidation to go onto the NASDAQ. But we believe that's where the market and the large institutions are. You keep hearing the US administration talking about critical metals, critical metals, critical metals. And they're making these deals everywhere, but not many of them have a path to production very quick. Whereas that is something for us. We have a path to expansion and production that is very visual. You know it's there, you know it's operated, you know it has worked before. We're just putting those puzzle pieces back together. It's like Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall, and we've got Humpty Dumpty back together for the most part. We're putting those last pieces in the puzzle, and that included this capital. I know a question is going to be, how long is that capital going to last you? And I'm going to say until we get through our PEA. Like, we'll get to that PEA or close to the end of that. We're going to be we're very well capitalized here. We've significantly decreased the burn from non-core activities. So we're actually looking at putting a lot of that money into the ground, as we like to say in the mining space, and making it work for us into catalyst after catalyst. I'll touch on the team and then I'll open up for questions. Myself, my background, I'll finish that last. I want to talk about myself. Let's talk about the amazing people that work here. Sean Whiteford, president of the company, deep background in exploration. Sean was the VPX for Cleveland Cliffs. I think they're a $12 billion company right now. Before that, he was VPX for Kennecott, which is a Rio Tinto company. Again, deep background in joint ventures, in exploration, and taking things to production. Same with Boris Kamstra. As you can tell by the name Boris, he is South African. So he's our resident African on the ground in South Africa. He is someone that's built mines all over Africa. So he will be our take it to production type person, has been integral and working with the engineers for us. The rest of the team, Jacqueline's probably on this call listening. She's our rock star IR and communications person that has been integral in putting all this together and has been with the company for a significant amount of time, knows all the backstop. Sharon Taylor, I mentioned before, as being an expert in the industry at borehole EM and exploration. And then Nape, who's the president of Premium Botswana. I would say without Nape, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. We have exceptionally strong government relations in Botswana. And that's because of people like Nape and Sean and myself. We all get down there. But having someone with such talent in the background and on the ground and such deep connections really makes, I'm going to say, my life easy. But it's never easy, but it makes the company shine in Botswana. A number of board members are brand new. You'll see more board members joining in the future as well. I'd like to highlight a couple that just joined. Paul Martin is chairman. He was the ex-CEO of Detour, took Detour right in through operations. Amazing work he did there. That got bought out for a large sum of money. He was the ex-interim CEO of Osisko Gold Royalties, another $4 to $6 billion company. We just added someone that is really unknown to the mining space, and I like to highlight him because he's a good friend, but he's also someone that I have a lot of respect for. His name's Celibbe. And Chris is the ex-CIO of BlackRock. I'm not talking the junior mining company. I'm talking BlackRock, the BlackRock. He was the chief investment officer for their $200 billion US equities pool. Before that, he also sat on their global group with Larry Fink and the rest. Before that, Chris was at Oppenheimer Fund as chief investment officer as well, led their multi-billion dollar portfolio there. So Chris is someone that, as we go on the NASDAQ, we see him playing a big role on the board, introducing us to funds, but also just the strategic knowledge that he has from being a part of those US equity groups for a very long time. We recently added Andre van de Kerk. Andre, another amazing human that is taking operations right from exploration to development to construction into operations. Most recently did that very successfully with Gato Silver, where he was a chief financial officer. Before that, he had done that with Golden Star Resources, where him and I had met years ago in Ghana. And he's done a number of other very significant roles. But the one thing I love about Andre is he comes into companies and he drives them right through to operations, and he's had multiple exits. So another strength on the board that knows what it takes to go from where we are into operations and beyond. We have a number of other board members, but you probably don't need to hear me ramble on about them. Jim Gowan's an amazing board member, tons of experience in Botswana, sits on the board of Teck, actually. Norm MacDonald is the chairman of the Cisco Gold Royalties board, and strategic advisors like Frank Justra, Andrew Bowering, and then myself. My background's been 20 years now, as of last week. 20 years in the mining space. I started working when I was 22, and then I ended up at 24 with Freeport-McMoRan in Indonesia at Grasberg. From there, I went to Oyu Tolgoi in Mongolia with Rio Tinto. Spent a number of years in West Africa building a mine and putting that into production. And then in and out of the metallurgical steel space in Canada and Peru. And then most recently in Canada with Sabina Gold and Silver as their engineering manager. And then I worked for a Saudi company for 3 years, building them a grain terminal in northern Vancouver. Had a son, so that wanted to be at home with him. And last 4 years been in the capital markets, 2 of which have been amazing within the Frank Justra ecosystem and group. And this is just, I'd put together a gold mining company about a year and a half ago called NexGold. That will be the next 2 major gold mines built in Canada. Both look like they'll be permitted this year. So that was a real fun journey. And when I looked at Premium, and Frank and I looked at it together, we said, this is the next journey. This, we think, could be a huge part of that supply chain. So that's all I got. And I'd love to take questions. I always love talking about Botswana, because if you're going to go there, let me know. There's a lot of amazing safaris. As the Botswanan people would say, it's the best safari in the world. So definitely go there.
All right. That was excellent. Thank you very much. I'm curious, the resource types or the mineral styles, what type of deposits are they? Are they the same? Or...
Yeah, one's a magmatic massive sulfide at Celibbe, and the other one's a massive sulfide, or a disseminated sulfide. And don't ask me geology, because that's a bad question. I'm the mining nerd, not the geologist.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah, I'll be honest. If anyone has a question on geology, aim it towards me. I will get you 100% an answer.
The concentration and the processing of the ore, are those with your own processing assets that are on your properties, or would that be done in a tolling process with from someone else doing that? What is the concept there?
For us right now, the concept's massively expand these resources significantly, like we're doing, and then we're going to be doing the study on building our own for now. If there is an opportunity in the future to partner with or buy a concentrator that is local, that is close to us, then we'll be looking at those.
And the idea right now is that it would be one facility you would build up, and then the ore from both mines would go there.
Yeah, and there's rail connecting both sites within kilometers. Celibbe has rail going right to the old Phoenix mine, and we're pretty close to that. So.
And what are the plans for this coming summer? And sorry, the rough estimate is what, 6 to 9 months to get some sort of a PEA or economic assessment out of it, or what's the rough timeline?
Look, from a PA standpoint, I'd say, like, conservatively Q1, that would be ideal. But we if you just go and do a PA on what you have when you know you have so much expansion potential, it doesn't do it justice. We want to show the scale here.
So you want to do a bunch more drilling before so you have extra data to show some of the scale that's there.
And we want to, not only do we want to do the drilling, we want to get the met work done, right? We want to optimize the met work, because the recoveries are really important, and showing that you could either go, we know we can go into a bulk con. We know that we can do somewhat of a separate con. We want to make sure that those are really honed in, and it's very low cost for us to do that. Again, having our own drills and contractors when we need them, we can get that done really quick.
In between the two projects, is there one is it the Selebi where you're putting the initial focus in on the drilling? Because that one, am I right to say that one is the one with the more upside potential?
Yeah, look, so I think Celibbe and Selkerk both have a significant potential. Celibbe at depth in his borehole EM plates, that's really where we're going to focus that Celibbe drilling. The expansion potential of Selkirk is actually fairly low cost for us. It's all the core is there. So we're going to start a massive reassay program. We're going to twin some of the holes, and we're doing a drilling program, and you'll see something come out in the next little bit on that from us.
Okay, so more specific plans on the details about that.
100%. Yeah.
It sounds like you're going to have the next 6-9 months is going to be very, if the PEA is sort of early next year, you've got a lot of drilling to do over the next 6 or 9 months.
Yeah, look, I mean, we plan on drilling significant amount and having our own drills. We're not beholden to a drill contractor. We'll have 3 drills running on surface at Celibbe. We'll have a drill or 2 running over at Selkirk. But again, those plans will be detailed here in the next week or 2. But yeah, we're going to be moving quick.
Can you, on the commodity side, in my mind, the future of copper is pretty clear. There's huge growing demand, and a lot of the supply is getting old in some of the big mines out there. But on the nickel side, there's been more volatility and concerns with a little more geopolitics involved there. What's your perspective, and how could changes in the nickel price affect your project?
Look, let's start with the geopolitical perspective. As someone that's lived in multiple parts of the world, and especially even in Indonesia, you're starting to see a lot of negative press come out of the laterite producers in Indonesia. Not only are there 2 things: one, they're starting to deplete their high-grade resources, but 2, they're starting to get a lot of pushback from the local population, right? When you go and destroy land like they have and flood villages, and it's just not nice over there right now. And I think you're going to see a bit of a decoupling of China and Indonesia from that sense. I mean, they're still friendly, but I do, like, I'm not even reliant on that. I think that the nickel will become such a strategic metal for air defense type tech, that kind of stuff, that you're going to want to see it honed in and really supplied into a U.S. entity. I think the U.S. critical metals supply chain is obviously being spoken about a lot. It's being funded by, DOE, DFC, OSC. You have a very strong, I think, tailwind coming at us here in the next little while. And, when you look at stock volatility, the biggest volatility to price swings are producers right now. Companies like us that are going to show expansion and size potential and then into production, I'm not looking at what's happening today and tomorrow. I'm looking at what's happening in the next 5 years. What are the leading indicators of the next 5 years? With nickel, it says by 2029, 2030, the price is going to go ripping, right? Because I like to use the word ripping, but it's going to go up, and it's going to go up significantly because a lot of these laterites are going to be depleted. A lot of these pure nickel companies and pure nickel plays in these swinging environments have no way to be sustainable. And when you start and stop mines over and over and over, that's not a great thing for the community. You end up losing the ability to find workers. I've seen that happen. I'm from a northern community in British Columbia where that's happened over and over. And I do think that given our location in Botswana, given that we're not, we're primary copper, cobalt, PGEs, and then nickel, I think we have the ability to balance it out nicely. So, nickel, say where it's at. I'm happy. I'm very confident we will be something that the world will like when we come out with our economics eventually. But, nickel goes up, it plays a significant part in it. So does copper. Copper goes up significantly, plays a significant part in it. I think that the nickel space is definitely something you're seeing. People's like Yildirim out of Turkey going out and trying to buy nickel projects. Nickel sulfide deposits and nickel massive sulfide deposits are exceptionally difficult to find. Not only are they difficult to find, then what do? You have to do all the studies, all the drilling. We have all that. Obviously not the study yet, but we have already produced out of it. We know it produces. So for us, it's at a point where I think we'll be a big part of that supply chain gap that will happen in the copper space. That is happening. I think we'll be a big part of that in the nickel space when the nickel supply chain gap is projected to happen. So yeah, I like to build when they're down to be ready from they're up.
You talked about uplisting to NASDAQ, and would do you envision there being a concurrent financing that would go along with your uplisting to sort of bring in a bunch of US shareholders and use that as a bit of a catalyst, or do you want to hit some other milestones before raising some more money with your pretty hefty balance sheet right now?
Yeah, our balance sheet is strong. We don't need to raise money at any point right now. I'm sure we'll be marketing a lot in the US, non-deal roadshow type stuff. We want to start getting the US funds aware of us. That is one of the things in Canada. A lot of the US funds are blocked from buying venture stocks, right? So for us, getting over to the NASDAQ, marketing out there, I'll be on the road a lot, in and out of New York, in and out of Botswana, London. I've got a pretty hefty roadshow plan, so I'll be seeing my son via FaceTime for a long time. But I think the awareness of this company really just needs to get out there. So I do not plan on raising money anytime soon. We'll put it that way. Now, if a BlackRock came to me and said, we're going to do a big deal at a huge premium, then those are different conversations. But for us, we're very well capitalized to execute on everything we need to do to create a lot of value for this company.
Yeah, and showing, and like, yeah, I think you've got a compelling case to make why the resource is much larger than it officially is. But when you actually can put out those drill holes, that really de-risks a lot of the thesis and can validate a much higher share price, I think.
I would say that at current size, it's not a small mine, right? At current size, at 30 million tons roughly of 3.35% copper equivalent, that's not insignificant. You know,
Yeah.
is that something that a major mining company is going to come in and say, yeah, I want to buy that right now? No. You know, that's not that. This isn't Kamoa-Kakula, right? But what this is something that will fit into a mid-tier, you know, sub $10 billion portfolio really well. We've seen that happen when Lionor got bought out for 4.7 billion. It was we were a part of the BCL assets that were worth, you know, 8 to 10 billion at one point. So, you know, when you talk about scale, I think this thing scales exceptionally well. Is it going to produce Kamoa-Kakula size? No, that's a $20 billion company, right? But what it will do is it will be a significant part of the GDP in Botswana. It will be a significant part of the supply chain from this part of Africa. So yeah, do I think we got a tiger by the tail or a lion by the tail in that part of the world? Yes, I really do. Do I know it expands? We're going to show that. All the evidence leads towards it. And when it expands, that's when the players come knocking. You know, bringing in a strategic at these levels, you know, we just brought in the money we needed. Unless someone's coming in at a higher premium, it doesn't make sense. We have the money to execute. We have the team to do it. We've got the plan. Why not show the value of this company now? You know, the next 6 months are going to get very punchy for us. As you can tell, there's a boxing glove behind me somewhere.
All right, there's a real metaphor for you. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I am going to switch over to some audience questions here. Botswana has commissioned an inquiry on the liquidation of BCL by the previous government. Does this impact you in any way?
No, and look, we have a very strong relationship with the government. The minute they commissioned that, we were, of course, on the phone with them, talking to them. This is mainly focused on understanding what happened in the process. So from our discussion with the Botswana government, right up to the president and the minister, they really, like most governments do when they come in, hey, we didn't like the decision you made here. We want to understand all the items leading up to that. Like, Botswana is a premier investment jurisdiction. We'll put it this way. And the president has definitely recognized that premium resources will play a big part of the GDP in the future. So, you know, we went from discussing this too, the president openly talking about how important premium resources is to the Botswanan economy. So I hope they get through this and understand what happened. You had a mine running for 36 years that went into liquidation with some not great decisions, and then it was parsed out into pieces. That's why I think going forward for us, it's so important to understand that our partnership with the government is very strong. We have a very good relationship there. So as far as the commission inquiry, I'm very excited that they actually get to learn and understand, like as a government, as a new government, understand what happened and it actually gives them insight into the mining space going forward, right? You always want to understand where things have failed so that they don't happen again like that. And that's what I think, and I applaud the president and the minister for actually taking the initiative to say, hey, mines have failed in our country before. We want to understand why, and we want to help mining companies to not fail in the future. That's really what I take from this.
Are there any plans to list locally the shares in Botswana?
It's definitely something we're looking at.
We discussed this a little bit, but there's a question here. What is the average drill length? So how deep do you expect to be drilling?
On the hinge zone, or the connector zone as we call it, anywhere from 1.8 to 2.3, 2.4 kilometers. It's just, it has to go at a different angle, right? So you have to drill from further away. We're going to use our underground drills, convert them to surface, and pre-collar those holes. So we'll have 2 drills going ahead of everything. And you can actually still see on the slide, when we pre-collar these, our geo team has set this up in a way that when we start hitting, we can wedge or directional drill off of them to get this thing to an inferred and potentially indicated very quickly. That's why it's set up the way it is.
And on the Selkirk mine, those are much shorter. It being an open pit, the drilling you need to do there, right?
Yeah, like 300 meters, 350, 400 meter holes. Yeah,
Right.
there's been evidence where we've had other groups in the past drill 600-700 meters, and it still keeps going.
Will PNR be inheriting some of the legacy environmental liabilities from the previous mine operator?
No, we did not inherit any environmental liabilities. We've actually been carved out of the smelter and the process plant. Those were sold off to an Indian group. Other than that, we have none of the environmental liabilities that were associated with those assets. Those are completely owned by someone else, and they're being disassembled right now.
With your NASDAQ listing, you said that's going to be your primary listing. Are you would you do an uplisting as well to the TSX, be dual listed, or what are your plans there on your listings?
We're going to assess which market actually holds the most volume, and from there we will make a decision as a team and a board.
What are the roadblocks to get to production?
I think the most common answer of roadblocks to production is usually permits. So I don't have that one to give you as an answer. Usually it's just scale and time. So for us, it's showing that the assets scale and then putting them into feasibility and going from there. So I wouldn't say they're necessarily roadblocks, but they're lock-in steps. They're value creating exercises every step of the way. So for us, the big roadblocks are just getting the work done, the time it takes to get the work done. But why we're doing so many coinciding activities, why we're not drilling and then doing met work, or doing met work and then going and doing the next step. We're compressing all that into one time domain because we can show a lot of value really quickly in this company. We know that. So again, the team's done an excellent job of stacking all these programs together. We're well funded to do it all. So why not do it all now? I like getting stuff done as quick as possible because you know what? If this market turns up, we want to be able to be ready for it. If this market goes crazy, we want to show that we've done all the work and we're ready.
All right. If things would go in reasonable time frames, when would you imagine you could get into starting production, ballpark here, not to pin you down too hard?
That's a hard question to ask when you don't have a feasibility out with a forward-looking statement. And I can say, please read the forward-looking statement. That will help. Look, our goal is to be a part of that required supply chain in 2029, 2030. Our goal as a company is to be a big part of that in this part of Africa. But you got to remember, we don't have to go through a large permitting process. There's a whole bunch of infrastructure. We don't have, 3 years of staff sinking to do. we have the fundamental basis for this. Now it's just making sure all the studies are correct and the financing are correct for it, right?
Yeah.
In the future.
You don't want to rush it and make mistakes. You want to get all the pieces properly in line.
I always like to say, you don't want to go too fast and you don't want to go too slow. We're like the middle porridge. We want to be just right.
When can we expect drill results for the middle deep M area?
We'll start drilling it here shortly. You'll see a news release coming out on that. And we'll just pound out continuous drill results. So I imagine the summer is going to get very exciting.
Okay. So
you're going exact date, but
yeah. So in a couple weeks, you're going to put out a press release saying, here is the plan for the summer. And then the drill starts spinning and the folks start working.
Look, I think we've already got drills spinning at Celibbe North.
Okay.
We've already shown that's expanding. We're going to keep expanding Celibbe North. We are going to have drills turning at Celibbe Hole here shortly, at Selkirk shortly. So I'd say just pay attention and watch. It's going to get pretty fun for us here shortly.
What process does one follow to become a potential vendor when the project gets to the mining phase?
Yeah, so if you're an in-country person in country in Botswana, we'll be running a standard qualification process. So we'll put a qualified vendor process together here shortly. It's something we tend to do in most countries, and it'll be applying to that qualified vendor process.
What is the U.S. government's interest in premium nickel?
What is the U.S. government's interest? I think I know who that came from. Look, we have and are in talks with many different U.S. government agencies. Given the nature of critical metals, the stability and the great relationship between Botswana and the U.S. government, there are many opportunities we're exploring within that angle. For now, I'm never going to tell anyone in the market that we have something until we have it, but we are working on many different angles of government and potential private equity type funding that would allow us to advance quickly and de-risk the cap structure of this company really quick.
All right. When would you think the project finance process would begin?
You know, if you go too early, it's much like a royalty process. If you go to try to sell your royalties too early, you're going to get horrible terms and you're going to probably not look great by selling it. The project finance is usually right coming into the feasibility. You know, you want to line up your finalized feasibility with your project finance and kind of that go metric. So, you know, that's something that we'll be making a project construction decision. I'm hoping in 2026, which kind of lines up with my goal or our goal. But until then, again, most companies will line up their project financing as they're finishing and finalizing their feasibility and understand it, or right after. I think that we have some unique opportunities given relationships between governments and between private equity groups that we could be doing that coinciding.
Is Premium expecting any significant departures from the mining, lifting, concentrating, and refining approaches contemplated in the 43101 released in 2024?
Unless they come out with a new technology that allows us to avoid all that, that would be that would probably be no. You know, ideally from our side, I mean, you look at the infrastructure, the old concentrator there was built for a much larger size operation. You know, when you have to do throughputs at much smaller amount because we're higher grade, you want to build your own. We're looking at beneficiating in country, which is a big part of this. But we also brought on some, you know, really, really talented metallurgists that have the ability to, like I said earlier, crack the code. And when you do that, you open up the opportunities to stage the project. I love phased projects. Artemis is a great example of a phased project. They took a project that was huge, they put it into bite-sized chunks, and now they're a $4 billion company or $3 billion company, but because they were able to phase the project. Celibbe and Selkerk, the nature of the projects will make them phaseable. They are going to be able to be phased. If you look even on this slide, you know, Celibbe North has a shaft that goes down to 785 meters. Like, we are going to be able to start that up really quick and start pulling from there. We have the first number of years of already developed, ready to go to start mining. You know, same with Celibbe Main. We may need to sink a shaft there in the future. We don't know yet, but we have the past shaft and we have the past infrastructure we can use. So when you ask me, you know, what our departures are going to be, we're going to use modern technology a lot more than they did, 40 or 50 years ago, or even 12 years ago, right? There's a lot of automation that will happen here. And look, I believe that you will see, as a company, you'll see us advance in the near future. And that will be very evident to the market of what we're going to be doing.
Do you see yourself developing the Celibbe and the Selkirk mines concurrently, or is it going to work on one and then move to the other one?
Look, I think they're a part of a larger processing philosophy. I think Celibbe and Selkerk have different attributes. Open pits are generally quicker and easier to get running, right? Given the nature of the infrastructure at Celibbe, I do believe that Celibbe in itself will be a positive for us to get running quickly. So I think we'll end up developing them both together.
How many meters a day do you expect to be drilling this summer?
Oh, that's I'll let my geologist answer that, but I think between a shift, 40 meters a shift would be ideal.
And in Botswana, is it 12-month a year drilling, or are there rainy seasons where you have to shut it down for a bit, or what is that situation?
No, it's pretty good. I mean, there's days where you don't want to drill, but there's not months where you don't want to drill. No, we have you got to understand. I mean, the underground itself, we can drill 24/7 all year round. So it's a huge advantage. We're not lock and cycled into a snowing season or into the Arctic or other places. Like, we can drill 24/7 all year round.
Yeah.
Like this is one of the advantages of, and creates an ability for us to move quick.
Is there a local town where people can live in that, or do you have to build a mining camp there for the crews?
No. So Celibbe Piquet is a town of 30,000 people. It's right there. We're literally like sandwiched against it. One of the old mine shafts is actually in the middle of town. So you're right there. For Selkirk, Francistown is very close as well. All the people used to live in Francistown and commute to both Phoenix and there. It's really quick. We're blessed with housing and infrastructure all around us.
When can we expect the NASDAQ listing, roughly? End of June, or what kind of ballpark are you given?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna vote on everything at the shareholder meeting, and then from there we'll be making a decision on when we uplist. So hopefully, sooner than later.
I'm combining two questions here on your processing. You did mention that the old processing plant was sold off to an Indian company, in which case, are you building a new processing plant? And someone else is asking, what processing options do you have?
Look, the Phoenix mine is just down the road from us at Selkirk. So, I mean, that's a private equity group that owns that, but there is a plant in country. And for us, we want to look at all the different options that are available. We do want to explore building a new facility for Celibbe, potentially. Like I said, combining them. Celibbe and Selkirk's throughput are significantly different. I mean, Selkirk will be in the 5+ million ton per annum range, and Celibbe will be significantly less than that. Obviously, throughput to grade is a game we play in creating that balance when we build them. But for us, we are exploring all the different opportunities and all the technology available to build either a new facility or potentially use one that's around us. But for now, it's the current plan will be outlined definitely in the PEA.
We have addressed all the questions from the audience. I cannot think of anything else to ask here. And we're hitting an hour into this presentation. So any final comments or thoughts to leave investors with as we wrap things up here?
It's very rare that you get to start with this many tons at this grade in this stage of a mine with this amount of infrastructure around it. So I always like to say is stay tuned, because the news flow is going to be significant, and we're going to be very concise in what we're telling the market. We're going to show the path very clearly as how these expand and how they grow, but also we're going to be talking about this a lot. You're going to see us out on the road interacting and talking about how we're growing this company, because I firmly believe that not only are we going to be a big part of the critical metal supply chain coming out of Botswana, I think there's going to be a lot of growth in this company that will make it a worldwide player in a very short period of time.
All right, Morgan, that was a great, very good presentation. Thank you, audience, for excellent questions out there. And thanks a lot. All the best. Looking forward to following the news that comes out. And I'd love to get you back here in in a few months when you've got a bunch of data out there, and we can review how much progress you've made.
Anytime. Love to be on.
Thanks a lot, Morgan. Cheers.
Thank you.